Hello, everyone. In this Culture Tourist interview, I have a pleasure to welcome Transromanica's Managing Director, Christin Leser. If you are following Culture Tourist social media channels, you might saw that we worked together on creating a set of 44 coloring postcards highlighting some of the fantastic Transromanica sites in Europe. Well, tomorrow I'm traveling to Slovakia and I'm going to visit some of those sites, which I'm very excited about. And of course, going to share them with you on my Facebook and Instagram page. However, I thought Christin would be a great person to have in this interview and ask a few questions about Transromanica and European cultural roots in general. So Christin, welcome to the Culture Tourist.
Hello there, thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here.
Thank you. Well, for those unfamiliar with it, can you just briefly explain what the Transromanica is?
Yeah, sure. Well, Transromanica is a cultural route that connects people, places, and regions all across Europe. And all of them share the common European heritage of the Romanesque art and architecture, with their thick walls, small windows, and round arches, typical floor plans, columns, and capitals. We can recognize Romanesque sites everywhere in Europe, between Germany and Italy, between Portugal and Serbia or Romania. And Transromanica invites you to embark on a fascinating journey to medieval times by looking at the similarities, but also regional characteristics of the Romanesque art. We learn about life in the Middle Ages. The stony witnesses tell us how mobile medieval societies were, how traveling led to the spread of ideas and knowledge, and how much connected Europe actually was already 1,000 years ago. And in fact, we are referring to the Romanesque art and architecture as the first common language of the old continent and the breeding ground of the European community today. And Transromanica, you can say, presents European regions united in diversity. It highlights European values such as cultural identity and diversity, dialogue and understanding between civilizations, that have not lost any of their importance during the past 1,000 years. And for this, Transromanica has been recognized as a cultural route of the Council of Europe for already 14 years now. And this certification actually rewards excellence in dealing with cultural heritage and can also be understood as a seal of quality for cultural tourism.
Yes, so you mentioned the Transromanica is one of the routes of European Council of Europe. Can you please explain us what are the cultural roots of the Council of Europe?
Yeah, well, actually, the Council of Europe initiated its Cultural Roots program already back in 1987 with the aim to implement its core principles: human rights, cultural democracy, cultural identity and diversity, dialogue and exchange across borders. And this is what the European cultural roots put into concrete terms. So most people probably know the Santiago de Compostela pilgrim routes. This was the first route that was certified by the Council of Europe. And since then, 45 routes have been recognized in total. Each of them represents a historical, artistic, or social theme of our European cultural heritage. These routes can be linear, which is, for example, the case with the Pilgrim Path, or they can be networks of places and regions like Transromanica. So we can say the cultural roots of the Council of Europe demonstrate in a visible way, by means of a journey through space and time, how the heritage of the different regions and cultures of Europe represents a shared European cultural heritage. And I like to see it in a way that the cultural roots help us to understand our history and heritage by looking at it from different perspectives. For example, from interpreting megalithic finds, to following the footsteps of St. Martin, for example, to discovering the legacy of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart.
Yes, well, you probably know the Transromanica route quite well. Can you tell me what are some of your favorite places alongside the route?
Well, that's hard to say. All the places along Transromanica really have their very own charm, and they fascinate me in different ways because everyone has its own story to tell. So, for example, the big cathedrals like in Königslutter, in Naumburg, Zamora, Pavia, or Alba Iulia, they're really impressed by their dimension. Here you can really feel that they represent a certain claim to power, that the places have played an important role throughout the history, and that a lot of resources were invested in their construction. In some cases, we can even tell that famous master builders were acquired from other European regions just to make sure that this building will become a really outstanding one. And then there are the monasteries. I love to visit these places because they really offer a great feeling of spirituality and tranquility. There are some of these places, for example, in the Harz Mountains in Germany. The monastery of Santo Domingo de Silos in Spain definitely is one of these favorites, or the 5 monasteries that are part of Transromanica in Serbia. Whenever I am at one of these treasures, I'm welcomed by an outstanding hospitality. And at some of them, you can even, you are even invited to participate in a monastic life. You can stay overnight, you can take part in services and other daily routines, and you can get involved with the monastic community. And then there are also the small churches that you can find, for example, in the Ribera Sacra in Spain, or along the Rota do Romanico in Portugal, or in Carinthia in Austria. So to me, these little gems, they are real beauties because I'm a big fan of this very plain style that most of them show. And very, very often you can find them in wonderful landscapes. My picture book example is always the Church Peninsula Maria Wirth with its 2 Romanesque chapels right in the middle of the clear blue lake Wörthersee. It's fantastic. You could just sit there and admire the view for hours.
Well, it's very nice that you already touched a little bit my next question. So I wanted to ask you, how is Transromanica supporting travelers visiting some of those places?
Well, over the past years, together with our Transromanica regions, we have developed quite some material to help visitors to find their way around Transromanica. For example, we have a website, of course, that holds a lot of information about all the Transromanica sites. It also has a great variety of news, good stories, route suggestions, and of course, contact details, addresses, etc. Then there is our travel magazine, which is called Transromanica, a fascinating journey through medieval times. You can order this magazine from our office free of charge, or you can read it online on our website, for example. And then in front of many of the Transromanica sites in different European regions, there are big Transromanica signposts installed that inform visitors about the site itself, about the history of the place, and about practical things such as opening hours, public transport that is in the area, or where's the next restaurant, for example. And if you are interested in more detailed information about specific sites or regions, then we would put you into contact with our colleagues on site. So in some cases, that would be tourist information office or tourism organizations. That could also be civil society associations or responsible people at the sites themselves. And in Saxony-Anhalt in Germany and in the north of Portugal, we have a special case, or we have special cases, because there we have regional routes of the Romanesque. In Saxony-Anhalt, it's called the Straße der Romanik, and in Portugal, it's the Rota do Romanico. And there you really have these regional routes. They link a large number of Romanesque sites in the area. And here we have contact persons that can provide you with much, much more information. There are, for example, route maps for this specific region. They have mobile applications and they have bookable tours, for example, that you can choose if you want to visit these regions.
Yes, with all of that, to me, the Transromanica and other Cultural Roots of the Council of Europe sounds like a perfect example of cultural tourism. However, I was wondering, besides the medieval sites, what else could visitors experience in those places?
Well, but the great thing is that Transromanica and many of the cultural routes encourage visits of heritage sites off the beaten track. So it's rather unlikely that you would have to queue for hours to enter a site, or that you have half of your souvenir photographs filled with the back of the heads of other visitors. So that's a great thing. And what has been important for us from the very beginning is to link the visit of our Romanesque heritage sites with other activities that are typical for the region. So you could, for example, follow hiking or cycling paths that are connecting two or more Romanesque sites. So you can have some activity between your visits. Or you can combine your site visits with tastings of local wines, or you can enjoy typical regional dishes. Of course, there are also music and arts events that can make your visit a very special experience. Not to forget the fantastic offers, for example, to participate actively. I mentioned earlier the opportunity to stay at a monastery, for example, or to take part in arts and crafts workshops. So these are just some examples of things that you could do to combine your heritage site visit with other things. And while talking about arts, you already mentioned it also. I have to say it again, we have these wonderful coloring postcards for all the Transromanica highlight sites that we developed together with you. And they really invite you to take a bit of Transromanica home with you, to get creative about it, to remember your visit, and to share your impressions with your family and friends, to make them also curious about it, maybe.
Yes, well, thank you so much, Christine, for joining me in this interview. It was a real pleasure having you.
Thanks, Thea, and enjoy your visit to Slovakia. I can't wait to hear what you think about it.
Thank you.